Hey, so welcome to Unmasked Church. I don't know. It's really a funny weird time we're getting to. If you came in and didn't get one when you came in, we are going to take communion a little later. We're going to change up the order a little bit today and let you know if you don't have one, raise your hand, and you want one. Dana will kind of hook you up with a little communion in a cup. You guys are like, oh man, we don't know what we came to today. Hey, it is good to see you guys, even masked. It's funny, preaching to just a camera for a while was really weird. And so it was great to be back together. But I still can't tell what people are thinking when I'm preaching. So I don't know if you don't, usually I can cue off faces. If you don't get something, someone will so maybe raise your hand if you have a no, I'm kidding. Because some of you would be like making all kinds of hand signals and, hey, steal second. But it's interesting. And then people say things and I can't quite hear them and then I never realized how much I use facial clues to understand what someone's saying. Maybe it's all that heavy metal music when I was younger, but I'm like, what did she say? Anyway, but that's nothing to do with the sermon today. But you're used to that. So Wakanda, good to see you. Anyway. We're working in the book of Ecclesiastes, and there's a key word in the book of Ecclesiastes is this idea everything is meaningless. And when you read Ecclesiastes the first time, if you kind of don't understand what's going on, you're just like, man, this is like a book of depression. Because everything's meaningless. Everything's meaningless. And I remember actually I taught this one time in another country, and the person actually had his whole life, he knew this priest who kind of just took this very pessimistic view of Ecclesiastes in life. And then after the class, he went and, because I kind of pointed to, hey, it's about the gospel and how it makes life meaning, and then he went to this old priest and he told him, he's like, man, a whole new perspective on this book. Because even though at the surface, it can look like everything in Ecclesiastes is meaningless. And it's been various translated. It's like kind of grasp smoke. You can't grab a hold of smoke. Most of us don't have a campfire. Go, I'm going to go home, take home some smoke. I'm putting my smoke collection. But it's just, there's things we can't grasp, and life slips through your fingers. And for many of us, depending on the stage of life you're in, you're young, you feel like you got the whole world, in front of you. And next thing you know, you're hitting 50 and you're like, when did that happen? Some of you are like, yeah, I don't even remember when 50 happened anymore. But often we seek meaning in life and things, but really, if we don't put our hope and our trust in God, nothing is lasting. And the gospel makes this ordinary life extraordinary. And so today we're turning to a part. Now, if you were here last week or listening last week online, we talked about the first half of chapter 5, and I've been doing kind of one chapter a week. You could probably spend a lifetime studying parts of Ecclesiastes, but we've been hitting it, and we're going to finish up the second half of 5 and all of 6. We're just overachievers. I think it's kind of a better way to break it up. And remember, the Bible wasn't written with chapters. It's not like, the teacher's going through and he goes, chapter 1, life is meaningless. Chapter 2. We kind of put these in later to find things. I think this makes a little more sense. But we're looking at a topic today that when I talk about this topic at church, everybody gets nervous. Now you're thinking sex? No, not that one. It's PG. We got the kids in with us now, till the government lets us do kids' church. But one of the topics that makes most people uneasy is when we talk about money. Now, with that said, don't worry. We're not going to pass a plate around today because there's a bucket in the back because we're not allowed to pass around plates. And, but money tends to make people nervous or anxious. And we talk about money a lot because the Bible says stuff about money. We're not trying to get an offering. We're not trying to drum things up. But how we understand and handle our money really is an extension of how we believe and what our faith is. So, just warning, we're going to get there. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, we're going to start in verse 8. It says, don't be surprised if you see a poor person. We're going to start off we're going to talk oppression first. Don't be surprised if you see a poor person being oppressed by the powerful and if justice is being miscarried throughout the land. For every official is under orders from a higher up, and matters of justice get lost in red tape and bureaucracy. See, not much has changed. There was red tape and bureaucracy then. Even the king milks the land for his own profit. And I could just leave that one alone in many ways, because I think, especially if you're older and you've kind of seen how the world works, we see that, right? And if it doesn't matter which administration is in, there's always like someone kind of scheming behind things, and people are being taken advantage of. And there's sort of a national conversation we're having right now, which I don't want to speak to because I don't think I'm the most competent person to speak to it, but it's kind of complicated and nuanced because people will often oppress other people, and a lot of times the root of that is financial. It's about money and holding wealth and not getting it to other people, and people want to protect what's theirs. And here what Solomon, which we believe is the writer of Ecclesiastes, even though he calls himself the teacher, we're not exactly sure. A lot of us, I'm in that group, think it's Solomon, Shlomo, if you will, because I think I've told you my Hebrew teacher. I took modern Hebrew before I took biblical Hebrew because I had a little extra space in my schedule, and you had to get a Hebrew name. It's kind of like when you take Spanish and they give you a Spanish name, which I like because I'm El Jefe. No, or in French I was Geoffroy, which is, my name translates. But Shlomo ended up being my name, which is Solomon. I thought it was the weirdest name. Then I figured out it was Solomon. I'm like, okay, that's better than what I was like, Shlomo? Sorry if your name's Shlomo. Anyone go to Shlomo? They're in the back? No. You're not going to mention it now, and you're never coming back. Often, what Solomon recognizes is that people are often oppressed, and people without means, are often have an unnecessarily hard life because people oppress them. It says the king milks the land. It's interesting if you read, the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, and you go through the history of it. It's interesting because there's this constant. They call out they want a king. They want a king. They want to be like the other nations around them. And at one point, Samuel's leading them, and it says, 1 Samuel chapter 8 says, so Samuel passed the Lord's warning to the people who were asking him for a king, because they kept, like, hey, you're going to die. Your kids aren't cutting it. They're not very good at the thing you've been doing. And so we want a king. Give us a king. Because you would think right there, if he wasn't cutting it and his kids weren't cutting it, Samuel was good, but his kids weren't cutting it. Yeah, so we want a hereditary king. That's a good thing, right? Anyway. but he says, so Samuel passed on the Lord's warning to people who are asking him for a king. He says, this is how a king will reign over you. The king will draft your sons and assign them to his chariots and charioteers, making them run before his chariots. It's like the original treadmill for those of you who don't like cardio. It's cardio because anyway. Some will be generals and captains of his army. Some will be forced to plow his fields and harvest his crops. Some will make his weapons and chariot equipment. The king will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes for him. He will take away the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his own officials. He will take a tenth of your grain and your grape harvest and distribute it among his officers and attendants. He will take your male and female servants and demand the finest of your cattle and donkeys for his own use. He will demand a tenth of all your flocks, and you will be his slaves. When that day comes, you will beg for relief from the king you are demanding, but the Lord will not help you. So they constantly want a king, even though there wasn't a king. And because often when people get power, there's good kings, there's good rulers, but often what happens with people in power? They use it for their own good, right? Because when you have, power, someone said, it's absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when you have power, most people, now I don't know, I think there's a good and bad nature in people, but often that bad side wins out, and we go for what is our advantage. Now, I will say it again because it bears repeating, and it's a biblical thing you need to know, is God's heart is for the oppressed. Deuteronomy chapter 24 says, never take advantage of poor and destitute laborers, whether they are fellow Israelites or foreigners living in your towns. You must pay them their wages each day before sunset because they are poor and are counting on it. It's like when you're living check to check, you don't hold that money back. If you don't, they might cry out to the Lord against you, and it would be counted against you as sin. And so constantly in the Hebrew Bible, there's this, God's love and his heart is for those who are oppressed. So just get that, kind of put that on a shelf. Think about that because that's important. Now, many people want wealth and success. Now, that's not all bad, right? It's good to, and then we have great examples in our culture, our recent history of people who made money and did good with it. But a lot of times people just want to climb the ladder of success and they don't mind kicking you in the head on their way up that ladder, right? Because it's about them. And so God hates injustice. You can't follow Jesus and do those things. But there's this misjustice in the world. Like, Christians should work for justice of the oppressed. But often, our desire for wealth, we'll use power because we want things. It's like a heart check we have to have. Ecclesiastes 5, starting verse 10. Those who love money will never have enough. Man, that is some truth if you don't know it. There's some layers upon layers on that. And those of you who are younger, you'll see in life as you go through, you never get enough. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. The more you have, the more people come to help you spend it. I love that. They're children. That's what they're called. No. So what good is wealth except perhaps to watch it slip through your fingers? And wealth is this elusive thing. And I believe we said this a couple weeks ago, but 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. The love of money. Now, some people say money is the root of all evil. Money in itself is not bad. If money was bad, if you think money is bad, I'm going to put the collection bucket up here, and you can just give me all your bad stuff. I'll take care of it for later. No. Money's just a tool. It's something. But money has this way of capturing our hearts when we don't see it. It's not a sin to make money. But the pursuit of it for its own sake is fruitless. It's the love of money, not just having money. And here's the thing. You can love money as a rich person, right? Everyone? Can you have a love of money and be poor, though? Uh-huh. It can still be an idol of your life, even if you don't have it. For many of us, it'll dominate our lives, and the pursuit of it will destroy our life. Now, in the Bible, there are many people who are wealthy. Abraham, man, read it. They had a lot of stuff. Abraham was wealthy. God made him wealthy, and he was generous. Job was wealthy. And he was generous. He was righteous. Jacob became wealthy. All these biblical patriarchs often have the cash. They got stacks on stacks on stacks. They got it. They got it. But, you see, if you love God, it means you handle your money differently. Here's the thing. Okay, because we all went, yeah, those rich people, okay? Right? Yeah, because who's rich? Someone who has more than you. Because we always kind of put it off. You go, oh, well, them. Yeah, those rich people. As you drive around in your car that most of the world doesn't have, talking on your cell phone that costs more than some people make in a year. I was thinking. Now, it was an interesting story. Tim Keller tells this story in one of his books, and I can't remember the exact book right now. But he talks about it's sort of a pastoral dilemma, if you will. One of the cool things about being a pastor is people come in and tell you all their sins and problems. No, I'm kidding. It's not cool. It's it's part of the. Now I'm going to tell you all of them because mine's gossip. So I want to start with Lewis. No, no, just kidding. But the sort of one of the pastoral things, a lot of times people come because they're struggling and wrestling and stuff. And I'm not going to out your sins, don't worry. But some of you are a little nervous right now. But the truth is we struggle with stuff, right? And so sometimes people come, they just need to tell somebody, I'm a safe person, I'll kind of walk them through it, maybe give them some scriptures, ways to think of, pray, different things to kind of help. Now, Tim Keller, who is older than me and older when he wrote this book, and he'd been in pastoral ministry a long time, he said something to the effect of, in all my years of pastoral ministry, I can never recall anybody coming to me and confessing the sin of greed. I think there's some truth to that. Because if you're a believer and a follower of Jesus, sometimes we think this one doesn't apply to us because we always think someone else struggles with it, but not us. But it's one of those things that's easy to kind of sneak in. If we have anger, we're like, man, I got an anger problem. And if you're a dude, you probably have an anger problem. Just saying, flat out. We do. We struggle with that. And so there's things we got to work on there. No problem. If you have, a problem with lust, that's kind of recognizable. You're like, oh, yep, there it is. I can deal with it. But often greed is like a sneaky sin. It's one of those that gets in there and it hurts you, but you can't tell. It's like you ever get a splinter you can't see? It's kind of like that. It's like it's in there, it's painful, it's working, but you kind of overlook it. And so even if you're a believer and a follower of Jesus, you have to watch out for greed. Now, again, it doesn't mean you don't pursue wealth. Rockefeller, gets kind of teased for his one quote about, he kind of always wanted more money, but he actually spent his money on philanthropic causes. That's a hard word to say, isn't it? I had to stop there for a second because because he was someone who learned to be generous with wealth. So you can be a believer, you can be a follower of Jesus and have money. But again, the question is always, does the money have you? And so anyway, it says people who work hard sleep well, whether they eat little or much, but the rich seldom get a good night's sleep. Mo money, mo problems. Anyway, some of you are singing along with me. But, it's funny because I love my kids. I do. I really do. They're cool kids. But you know what's funny? They don't worry about the electric bill, right? They just turn that thermostat wherever they want. And if you're a dad in the winter, you're turning it down because you think 50 degrees is fine. That's why I heat with wood, because I can make it hot. In the summer, it's funny because you'll turn it down to 65 in the winter. You're like, that's why we make blankets. And then in the summer, everyone turns it down to 65. We're like, if you didn't want it 65 in the winter, why you went there in the summer? But just saying, dads, we're constantly about the thermostat because we're paying the bills. And I'm not meaning to be sexist or anything in that, but just kind of stereotype for dudes. And kids don't worry about it. We do. And so because the more you have, you start worrying about all these things. And, it's easier to work 9 to 5 for somebody than it is to run a business. Some of you run businesses. It's stressful, isn't it? Like, the pandemic thing hits, and you're not just worrying about your paycheck, you're worrying about the paycheck for all the people who work underneath you. You're worrying about the people who are your clients. There's a lot to worry about. I went yesterday, I did one of the greatest, most fun things in the world. I cut down a tree. And some of you see the pictures, you kind of figure out whose tree I cut, but we cut this big tree. Now, we cut the tree, we spent the whole day dicing it up, making it into firewood for other people here. And, I slept well. I was exhausted. I got home, hydrated a little bit, boom. I didn't wake up, my alarm went off, I'm like, whoa. like why am I waking up? Oh yeah, it's Sunday morning, I need to get up, do that church thing with my peeps. But I sleep well because I wasn't worried about much. Yesterday I was just lumberjacking it, man. You're just like, you do your job, you go to bed. But a business owner, they got lots of things to worry about. And the further you move up the chain, the more stuff you're worried about. And so often when we have stuff, we have money, we're running a business, things stress us more. The more you have, the more you worry about it. Anyone ever travel? Well, not right now, because we're not going. I travel to my living room to turn on a virtual tour of some museum or a beach, whatever your bent is. I'd be more likely to hit the museum. I really want to go to a museum this summer, and I can't right now because everything's locked down. Anyway, some of you are like, this guy is weird. So if you haven't figured that out till now, hey. But, when you travel, it's interesting because a lot of times I have to carry cash because, you need some things you can do a credit card with or an ATM card, but then there's sometimes when you're in the third world, things don't work. So you got to have some cash too because you got to pay because, just because there's an ATM doesn't mean there's electric. Doesn't mean there's internet that day. Sorry, this is a no internet day. Some of you would not survive in the third world. Some of you go camping and you bring along a vehicle that's the size of a house. You're wondering if you can make it. Anyway, so when you go, it's interesting because you tend to hide your money, and then if you get off the plane or something, they say pickpockets. One of the ways, certain areas are really notorious for pickpockets. They say one of the ways you can tell where someone's money is they touch it, they check it, right? Like every minute you make sure your wallet's in there because you're like, oh, it's kind of scary in here. Check my wallet, check my money belt. We do all these things because it's important to us, so we're checking on it. And so it's the more you have. If I got $5 in my pocket, I ain't worried about it whether it's in there or not. I'm like, oh, I don't have my $5. But if I've got $500 in my pocket, you're worrying a little more about where your wallet is. Yeah, that for most of us that's significant. Maybe you're rolling in it. You got that gangster mask on. Apparently, you robbed a bank on the way here. I'm just saying. Anyway. Take it off, and there's another. Yeah, it looked like it robbed a stagecoach. Some of the, I love it though. It's like masks are becoming a fashion statement. It's like, oh, that's it. I was somewhere yesterday. I was in a meeting right before lunch, and the person's like, I really like your mask. I'm like, oh, thanks. A friend made it. And I'm like, when is it? Like, what? I never in my life thought people would be complimenting my mask. Right? Like, this is weird. Let's just laugh because we're in a weird time. Anyway, and so. Verse 13, it says, there is another serious problem I've seen under the sun. Hoarding riches harms the saver. Money is put into risky investments that turn sour, and everything is lost in the end. There is nothing left to pass on to one's children. We all come to the end of our lives as naked and empty-handed as the day we were born. You come in naked, you go out naked. Or maybe they throw a suit on you. We can't take our riches with us. And this, too, is a very serious problem. People leave this world no better off than when they came. All their hard work is for nothing, like working for the end. Throughout their lives, they live under a cloud, frustrated, discouraged, and angry. So we're going to end on that. No, I'm kidding. Verse 14, it's interesting. I think maybe a better translation would be, and those riches were lost in a bad venture. I don't think the Hebrew has just the idea of risky venture, but a venture. And a lot of times, 2008 for a lot of us. Your 401k became a 201k, right? Stock market dropped, everything you put away went away. I was reading articles because I love, we're very obsessed with ourselves in America, right? Like we tend to only think of us. And so it's interesting to try to read other articles about how people in other countries are dealing with things like this. And I read one on the people who run safaris in other countries. And this guy, they constantly have tourists coming in for safaris. We no longer shoot the animals. We shoot the animals more like Julie does. It's beautiful. You get to see nature. There's nothing like seeing a lion right outside your car to change your perspective a little bit on life. It's great. But it tends to be kind of something that, one, you have to be able to travel there. And it tends to be, wealthier people who go to do a giant safari or something. But, this guy bought a new safari vehicle because it was a good investment. He was like, man, we got more tourists coming in. I'll have a better vehicle. I can do it. Pandemic, quarantine, it's just sitting there. He's like, I haven't moved it since I bought it. And I feel bad for the gentleman because he did what seemed like a good investment, right? New safari vehicle, American tourists, I'm thinking Europeans, they love that air conditioning, although a lot of times you don't have air conditioning, there's nothing but a pane of glass between you and that animal. It's an interesting, but not that I'm wealthy, I just have gotten to, while I was over there, sometimes slip out in a game park. But, it seemed like a good investment, and it's not. It's not even just risk, but often we invest in things and they go away. And the problem is, for many of us too, it's like how much money is enough. Most of us would say what? Okay, think of a dollar amount in your head. Like, what do you need to make to be happy? Now, there is like a certain level, like they say money won't make you happy, won't buy happiness. It will when you're completely po. Like being able to eat, good thing. Having a roof over your head, good thing. And when you don't, they've studied it, and there's a measure of happiness that you get from not being destitute. But it kind of limits at some point. I was following a discussion even on Reddit about this, and it's like, what makes people happy and how much do you need? And for most of us, we kind of set a dollar figure. If I make this, I'll be happy. Okay? Now think back in your life. When's the time when you were hoping that you would make what you make now to be happy? And before that, I remember when I was getting paid $3.15 an hour minimum wage. Some of you could work that math out and figure out how old I am from that. But I remember thinking, man, I'm balling. I got like $30 in my pocket. I worked 10 hours. $30 doesn't make me as happy as it used to make, right? And there's this constant desire for more. Most of us would say, how much will make me happy? More than I make now. It's this sliding scale. Again, it's not bad to have money, but as believers, as followers of Jesus, we have to watch that our heart doesn't go there with our money. And again, you can be poor, you can be rich, but this love of money it's kind of like, it's something that festers in us. It kind of surprises us, like a zit. It's kind of out of nowhere. You're like, oh, there it goes. It's something building inside. See, we get that money and we adjust our income and we feel like we need more. Again, not a sin to make money, but ultimately, money's not the thing that's going to satisfy us. Satisfaction in life comes when you learn to trust and to be content in all circumstances. Philippians 4:13. Anyone know that verse offhand? I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Man, we love that one, right? Like I'm about to squat 800 pounds. I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Maybe you couldn't. Remember the white cat meme that was kind of popular before the whole world exploded, and no one cares about white cat memes right now. But there was this one I liked. I'm in a couple of groups for like pastors, and we chuckle at some things that are funny about church, that you almost have to do this job to really understand how funny it is. There was the white cat, the girl screaming, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And the cat's like, you can't even go to church when it's raining outside. We literally, and some of you don't feel convicted. You're here for the pandemic, so it's just y'all at home. No, I'm kidding. It's funny. If it's raining outside, we know our attendance is going to be lower. Because, man, you look outside, you're like, I ain't getting wet. I'd have to shower, which is getting wet in my house. But then I'm fear getting wet out. But it's natural. It's a rainy day. You don't want to go anywhere. I get it. But we apply that verse to all kinds of things, right? We love that verse. But here, back it up. We're going to back up verse 11. Not that I was ever in need, this is Paul writing, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. Man, that's a hard thing to do, but it'll change your life. If you learn to be content, and again, it doesn't mean you don't strive to make more money. It doesn't mean you don't strive, but can you be content in your heart with where you are? Can you be content? I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it's with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little, for I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. It's not a verse about winning football games. It's really about being content in Christ. Now, here's the thing. Can you be content living in a mansion? We're all like, yeah. Can you be content living in a tent? I like some honesty here. we got to know.
Is the tent inside the mansion?
Can you be content driving a new car or riding a new bike?
Aluminum bike versus carbon fiber.
Can you be content with aluminum bike versus carbon fiber? Some of you don't understand, man. Carbon fiber, man, things are getting lighter, better. I don't know. I'm already pulling a lot of weight. It doesn't matter how much I lighten that bike up. It's like wearing a 200-pound backpack. Do I look a little different than the other bikers? I look more like I belong on a Harley. I remember one time I was helping out with the wrestling team for a while at the high school, and the coach was introducing me to some of the new kids. He's like, this is Jeffy. You'll see him riding all over Magnolia in this poor little bike. And the kids were like, "Are you going to say something back?" I'm like, "Nah, man, I feel him, man." I'm a big guy for a little bike. I look like a clown sometimes, I swear. And I wear yellow, so if you hit me, you should not have a driver's license, because there's a lot of yellow wrapped around in there. Point being is, though, can you be content if you have a nice bike or a bike? You know, if you have Walmart weights or road weights. I don't know. trying to make it for some of you. I don't know what the rest of y'all do. Can I be content with, Del Monte or Walmart brand? Can I be content with Fruity Pebbles or, Fruity-O's or whatever they're called, the big bag of stuff, The secret is to figure out how to be content in all those things. Because the only thing that will really make us content is having this relationship with Christ. Now, we talked about a guy named Pascal, kind of said that I gave a lengthy kind of wordy quote that he gave. But the concept is that, there's a God-shaped hole inside all of us. The only thing that fits there is Christ. That's what will bring us contentment. Now, you remember those shape sorters when your kids are little? It's like you try to put the square in. Some of y'all still need that because I've seen you trying to put things in your car at Lowe's. But that was you, wasn't it? No, but it's true. But, there is something in us that, as humans, the only thing that will really satisfy us is Christ. Now, we can put things in there for a while and it kind of feels good, but it doesn't really satisfy. The only thing that truly satisfies is Christ. And again, you can have a ton of money. It's not sin. But does the money have you? Is it what you're putting your hope and trust in? Verse 18. Even so, I've noticed one thing, at least that is good. It is good for people to eat and drink and enjoy their work under the sun during this short life God has given them, and to accept their lot in life. It is a good thing to receive wealth from God and the good health to enjoy it. Good thing. To enjoy your work and accept your lot in life, this is indeed a gift from God. God keeps such people so busy enjoying life that they will take no time to brood over the past. Derek Kidner said, if there's anything worse than the addiction money brings, it's the emptiness it leaves. And a lot of times, we can have money, we can have wealth, but we kind of miss out on the moment and the things that God's given us. Now, I love my kids, but I have a confession to make. Sometimes they're talking to me and I start looking at my phone. I know, that's horrible. I'm a horrible dad, right? No, but it's like we're kind of programmed to look into that. I keep talking to my wife, and next thing you know, I'm checking my phone. She's like, Jeff. No, she's very gentle, but reminding me, hey, put the phone down. Because it's easy to get distracted, and it really is. And there's these good things in life that's God given us. And so we can enjoy those. Now, it's funny because we have to, especially I think in our culture, in our society, men, and I know there's some single ladies out there, but often guys, we feel this need, this drive to provide for our family, and that's great. But often guys I see ignore their family in trying to provide for them. And they're really doing more than provide. Now, again, it's not bad to make money, but you got to watch where your heart is. You constantly, checking our phones instead of checking in with our family. And, money is something we all need it to get by, but we have to be careful that we don't wrongly focus our lives. Now, I know that was a little bit, I still got a little time, right? Okay, Ecclesiastes chapter 6. We're gonna speed read this one. I'm gonna read the chunk and then I'm gonna hit some things. Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse 1. There is another serious tragedy I've seen under the sun, and it weighs heavily on humanity. God gives some people great wealth and honor and everything they could ever want. But then he doesn't give them a chance to enjoy these things. They die, and someone else, even a stranger, ends up enjoying their wealth. This is meaningless. A sickening tragedy. That happens. We've seen it, I'm sure, in life. A man might have 100 children and live to be very old. Now, some of y'all are thinking 100 children, I can hardly deal with 1 or 2 or 3. But in the Old Testament times, that was like a blessing to have that many and to live a good old life. It says, but he finds no satisfaction in life and doesn't even get a decent burial, which was like an important thing then. It would be better for him to have been born... it would have been better for him to be born dead. His birth would have been meaningless, and he would have ended in darkness. He wouldn't even have had a name, and he would never have seen the sun or known his existence, yet he would have more peace than in growing up to be an unhappy man. Pretty depressing. He might live 1,000 years twice over, but still not find contentment. And since he must die like everyone else, well, what's the use? All people spend their lives scratching for food, but they never seem to have enough. So are wise people really better off than fools? Do poor people gain anything by being wise and knowing how to act in front of others? Enjoy what you have rather than desiring what you don't have. Just dreaming about nice things is meaningless, like chasing after the wind. You could live 200 lifetimes. You could have 100 kids. All these things that don't mean anything without Christ, without that God-shaped hole being filled by God. And many of us spend our whole lives pursuing something we can't catch. It's like catching smoke. It's like grabbing at wind. It's like trying to, hug a cloud. And many are never content. Some of you are parents. You ever go on a road trip? What do the kids always say constantly? I didn't even have to lead you with that line. It doesn't matter. You've been in the car 5 minutes. Are we there yet? Yep, this is it. I'm bringing you to an abandoned lot. Get out. Because it's constantly, are we there? Are we yet? And a lot of times in life, we're not satisfied. We're like, are we there yet? Are we there? I want this. I want that. There's this impatience. But we have to learn also just to enjoy the things that God, has given us. Most of us spend our lives pursuing things, but we miss the greatest thing we should pursue. We're made to pursue God. We're made to enjoy life. God's given us gifts. It's like when your kids are little and you give them Christmas gifts, right? Anyone? You're mean if you didn't give your kids Christmas gifts. I'm sorry. That's not our faith. We're generous. No, but that's a whole other side story. But it'd be like giving your kids Christmas gifts and then they never open them and unwrap them and play with them, right? That'd be weird. God's given us things to enjoy, but we tend to sometimes just people can pursue wealth to the point they don't stop to enjoy it, right? You've all seen this, Ebenezer Scrooge is like the stereotypical, he has all this money, he doesn't do anything with it. He just kind of keeps hoarding it, not even enjoying it himself. Life is like a hamster wheel sometimes. You just feel like if you had ever a hamster growing up, someone's like, oh, I forgot to feed my hamster. But it's like a hamster runs the little wheel, they never get anywhere. And life can be like that. It's like this treadmill that goes nowhere. But until we realize that life can be this hamster wheel, we can't get off it. We can't make sense of it. And people give their whole lives in this pursuit of money, but it really won't bring them the enjoyment that God has created for them. It says everything has already been decided. It was long ago that each person would be. So there's no use arguing with God about your destiny. The more words you speak, the less they mean. So what good are they? In the few days of our meaningless lives, who knows how our days can best be spent? Our lives are like a shadow. Who can tell what will happen on this earth after we're gone? Love God, enjoy life. Money without the joy of Christ is like this morning. I got up and I was working on a few things, and my battery life was at like 11% on the laptop. So it's a little older, so I know that battery's going to crash. So I plugged in the wall charger, and I came back, and it hadn't charged at all. And in fact, I was probably in danger of losing the entire sermon notes because I hadn't saved all my changes, because I didn't actually plug the charger into the laptop, which is the second stage for those of you who are unfamiliar with this technology.
Sounds like we're not the ones that are familiar with the technology.
Here's the thing. You got to be plugged in and connected to make it work. And life is like that. If we're not plugged in and connected to the God who created us, life's not going to work the way it's supposed to be. We're not going to recharge the way we're supposed to be. If you set your heart on God, not the riches, you'll learn to be content in all circumstances. And again, it doesn't mean we won't pursue wealth. It doesn't mean we won't make money. I'm praying God will bless you and you will tithe. But that's a joke. But we have to be careful where our heart is. If someone, came to you about life, I imagine Ecclesiastes would not be the book you're throwing at them for encouragement. But there's a lot of truth in here. And it's, everything in life is fleeting, right? It goes by, wealth, luxury, boom, they're gone. some of you are older, kind of, yeah, boom, where'd my life go? Politics, pursuit of power, it'll never bring satisfaction. Last week we talked about, religion, and saying things, we'll never impress God, we'll fail to impress others, we'll wear ourselves out with all that stuff. Life under the sun can be so hard and confusing at times, but it's a gift that God has given us to enjoy, and it ultimately prepares our hearts for eternity with Him. And we're made for these eternal things. And so that's why life here doesn't fully satisfy us, because we're made for something more. And if this is new for you, whether you're here or whether you're watching online, would love to talk to you about that. Love to talk to you about faith. Try not to fill things with temporary things, because you'll never be full.